left the entire county in disbelief. She discovered a century-old safe hidden beneath the floorboards, containing something that would transform not just her life, but an entire community's future. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn wind whistled through broken fence posts as Sophia Carter stood at the edge of the overgrown apple orchard, watching the auction company's staff hammer weathered signs into the hard ground. Each stake seemed to puncture more than just soil. They pierced through the dreams and hopes of whoever had once called this place home. Willow Creek Farm had been abandoned for nearly 3 years now. The once thriving 120-acre property with its historic farmhouse, red barn and sprawling orchards had fallen into disrepair after the previous owners foreclosed. Sophia had driven past it countless times during her daily commute to the diner where she worked double shifts, always wondering about its story. "Mom, are we really going to try to buy a whole farm?" asked 10-year-old Lily, approaching quietly from behind. Her voice sounded small against the vast, neglected landscape, the question hanging in the crisp air like the apples that had fallen and rotted on the ground. Sophia tucked a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders, unable to find the right words. Her son, Ethan, 14, joined them, his expression a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed excitement. "I made hot chocolate," Ethan said, offering them each a thermos cup. A simple gesture trying to normalize what was, by any measure, an outlandish plan. "Ms. Peterson from the bank called again," he continued after a moment. "She says they're still processing your loan application, but it doesn't look promising. She mentioned your credit score." Sophia nodded, her throat tight. 6 years as a single mother after her husband Tom's sudden death had left her financially vulnerable. Between medical bills, the cost of raising 2 children, and her modest income as a waitress, her credit had taken hit after hit. The $32,000 she had managed to save from Tom's life insurance was all she had left to build a new future. "We've looked at 12 properties," Sophia said, her eyes scanning the dilapidated farmhouse. "This is the only one remotely within our reach, and even then, the auctioneer expected the starting bid to be around $85,000, a testament to how far the once grand property had fallen. The bank had valued it at nearly $400,000 in better days. But the remote location, years of neglect, and the current economic downturn in rural Mapleton County had made it a liability rather than an asset. "What if we don't get it?" Lily asked, leaning into her mother's side. "Then we keep renting the apartment and saving," Sophia replied, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. "But this place—" She didn't finish the thought. This place had sparked something in her the moment she saw the listing. Despite the peeling paint, sagging porch, and fields choked with weeds, Sophia had felt an inexplicable connection. Perhaps it was the apple orchard that, despite years of neglect, still produced fruit. Or maybe it was the determined wildflowers that had pushed through the cracks in the old stone walkway, refusing to surrender to abandonment. Whatever it was, Willow Creek Farm represented more than just affordable housing to Sophia. It represented possibility, the chance to give her children space to grow, to perhaps generate income beyond her waitressing job, to put down roots after years of feeling adrift. The farmhouse itself seemed to sag under the weight of secrets and neglect, its once bright white paint now grey and peeling, repairs postponed until the house appeared to be actively surrendering to time and gravity. The barn's roof had partially collapsed on one side, and the greenhouse was more frame than glass. Yet despite all this, there was something compelling about the property, something that whispered of resilience. Word of Sophia's interest in the farm had spread through Mapleton County quickly. In a town of just over 5,000 people, news traveled fast, especially when it involved a widow with 2 kids attempting something as audacious as buying a farm. "Heard Westridge Development is sending representatives to the auction," said Margaret, Sophia's co-worker at the diner, who had stopped by with a basket of muffins. They'd been buying up all the foreclosed rural properties within 50 miles, tearing down the old buildings and putting up those cookie-cutter suburban homes. They call it revitalization, but it's more like erasing history. Sophia clenched her jaw. The thought of bulldozers tearing through the heritage apple orchard, or levelling the fieldstone walls that had stood for over a century, made her stomach turn. "We'll be at the auction tomorrow," Margaret added, patting Sophia on the shoulder. "Most of the diner staff will. Not that any of us can afford to bid, but, well, we want to be there for you." That night, as Lily and Ethan slept in their small, shared bedroom in the apartment, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, spreadsheets, and loan rejection letters spread before her. She traced her finger over the aerial view of Willow Creek Farm, trying to imagine how she would manage such a property, even if, by some miracle, she won the bid. The farm would need extensive repairs. The orchard would need pruning and care. The fields would need to be cleared and planted. And all of this would have to happen while she continued working at the diner to keep food on the table and pay the property taxes. "Maybe this is crazy," she whispered to the empty kitchen. "Maybe I'm chasing an impossible dream." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. From the hallway came Ethan's voice, startling her. Dad would have thought it was a great idea. Sophia looked up to see her son leaning against the doorframe, his lanky frame reminding her more of Tom with each passing day. "Your father was always the dreamer between us," she said, a sad smile forming. "I was the practical one." "Maybe it's time for you to dream a little," Ethan replied, sitting across from her. "You've been taking care of us, working double shifts, never complaining. Don't we deserve a chance at something different? Something better?" His words struck a chord. For 6 years, Sophia had been in survival mode, focused on keeping her small family safe, fed, and together. The idea of taking a risk, of reaching for something more, seemed almost foreign now. "The orchard alone could be something," Ethan continued, pointing to the aerial view on her laptop. "Mr. Jenkins at school says heritage apple varieties are making a comeback. People in the city pay premium prices for them." Sophia studied her son's earnest face, seeing a maturity that both impressed and saddened her. 14-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about agricultural market trends or their mother's financial struggles. "When did you get so grown up?" she asked softly. Ethan shrugged. "Around the same time you started working 60-hour weeks." The statement wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact, but it still pierced Sophia's heart. Her children had been forced to grow up too quickly after Tom's death. Perhaps this farm, this crazy, improbable dream, could give them back some of the childhood they deserved. As dawn broke on auction day, Sophia stood in the small bathroom of their apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her hands trembled slightly as she applied mascara, a rare concession to vanity on a day when she needed every ounce of confidence she could muster. "You can do this," she told her reflection. "The worst that happens is you don't get the farm, and life continues as before." But as she said the words, she realized how much she had invested emotionally in the idea of Willow Creek becoming their home. The thought of returning to their cramped apartment after today, of telling Lily and Ethan that their fresh start would have to wait, made her chest tighten. The drive to the auction site was quiet. Ethan stared out the window, his expression unreadable. Lily clutched a small, smooth stone, her lucky charm, so tightly that her knuckles were white. When they arrived, Sophia was surprised by the number of vehicles already parked along the dirt road leading to the farmhouse. The sight of so many people triggered a wave of anxiety. More interest meant higher bids, and higher bids meant She stopped herself, one step at a time. The crowd gathered on the patchy lawn in front of the farmhouse was a mix of locals in worn jeans and work boots, curious neighbors, and a small cluster of men in business casual attire who stood slightly apart, checking their phones and speaking quietly into Bluetooth earpieces. Margaret waved from near the registration table, where Sophia needed to provide identification and proof of funds to receive a bidder's number. The diner owner had closed the restaurant for the morning, so the staff could attend, a gesture of support that nearly brought Sophia to tears. "Your whole cheering section is here," Margaret said, gesturing to where several of the diner regulars stood. "Old Mr. Finnegan even put $20 into the pot, said to add it to your bid." She winked. "Every little bit helps, right?" As Sophia completed the registration process, a sleek black SUV pulled up, and two more men in crisp button-downs emerged, both carrying tablets with the Westridge Development logo clearly visible. They surveyed the property with calculating eyes, making notes and occasionally taking photos of the structural defects in the buildings. "That's David Chen," Margaret whispered, nodding toward the older of the two men. "Regional Director for Westridge. If he's here personally, they're serious about this property." Sophia's heart sank. How could she possibly compete with a development company? She looked down at her bidder's card, number 17, and wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. At precisely 10 a.m., the auctioneer, a portly man with a booming voice, called everyone to attention. The crowd quieted as he outlined the terms of the sale: cash or pre-approved financing, 10% deposit due immediately, closing within 30 days, and the property sold as is, with no warranties expressed or implied. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today for the public auction of the property known as Willow Creek Farm, 120 acres, with farmhouse, barn, outbuildings and established orchard. Due to foreclosure proceedings, bidding will start at $85,000. Sophia closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. This was it. Her savings of $32,000 wouldn't be enough for the full purchase, but combined with the small personal loan she had secured from Mapleton Credit Union, she could bid up to $110,000. Beyond that, she had no options. $85,000, do I have $85,000? Sophia raised her bidder's card, her hand steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her. She was aware of Ethan and Lily standing close on either side of her, their presence both a comfort and a reminder of what was at stake. "I have $85,000 from bidder number 17. Do I hear $90,000? Almost immediately, David Chen from Westridge raised his card. $90,000. $90,000 from bidder number 23. Do I hear $95,000? Sophia raised her card again. The next few minutes passed in a blur of rising numbers. $95,000, $100,000, $105,000. Each time Sophia bid, Chen counted smoothly, without hesitation or emotion, as if they were bidding on a used car rather than what Sophia hoped would be her family's future. At $110,000, Sophia's stomach clenched. She was at her absolute limit. When Chen bid $115,000, she kept her card lowered, her chest tight with disappointment. $115,000 from bidder number 23, going once. Lily looked up at her, eyes welling with tears. "Mom, I'm sorry, sweetheart," Sophia whispered. "We can't go any higher." "Going twice." The auctioneer's gavel hovered in the air. Sophia felt a peculiar numbness spreading through her body, a defense mechanism against the crushing disappointment. $120,000. The voice came from behind them, clear and firm. The crowd turned to see who had spoken. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and practical clothes raised her bidder's card, number 8. David Chen looked momentarily surprised before recovering and raising his own card. $125,000. $130,000, the silver-haired woman countered without hesitation. A murmur ran through the crowd. The property, in its current condition, wasn't worth much more than $100,000 according to most local assessments. The bidding was now entering territory that defied conventional economic sense. As Chen consulted briefly with his colleague, Sophia studied the woman who had entered the bidding so unexpectedly. There was something familiar about her, though. Sophia couldn't place where she might have seen her before. $135,000, Chen said, his voice slightly less confident than before. $150,000, the woman responded immediately. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Chen spoke urgently into his Bluetooth earpiece, his expression growing increasingly frustrated. Finally, he shook his head at the auctioneer. $150,000 going once. Going twice. The auctioneer scanned the crowd for any additional bids. Finding none, he brought down his gavel with a sharp crack. Sold to bidder number 8 for $150,000. The tension drained from Sophia's body, leaving behind a hollow ache. She had allowed herself to hope, to dream, and now she needed to face reality again. She put on a brave smile for her children. "We'll find something else," she promised, though the words felt empty even to her own ears. As the crowd began to disperse, Sophia gathered her courage to approach the woman who had won the auction. It seemed only right to congratulate her and perhaps learn a little about her plans for the property that had, however briefly, occupied such a significant place in Sophia's dreams. "Excuse me," Sophia said as she approached. "I just wanted to say congratulations on your purchase." The silver-haired woman turned, studying Sophia with bright, intelligent eyes. "Thank you. You're Sophia Carter, aren't you? Waitress at Margaret's Diner, 2 children, interested in heritage apple cultivation." Sophia blinked in surprise. "How do you know all that?" "Small town," the woman replied with a slight smile. "And I make it a point to know who's interested in properties I'm considering. I'm Eleanor Harmon." She extended her hand. Sophia shook it, finding the grip firm and direct. "It's a beautiful property, or it could be, with some work." "It certainly could," Eleanor agreed, looking past Sophia to where Ethan and Lily stood, watching them curiously. "Those are your children?" "Yes, Ethan and Lily," Sophia said, gesturing for them to join her. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me, Miss Carter, why were you interested in Willow Creek Farm? It's hardly an obvious choice for a single mother working at a diner." The question might have seemed intrusive from someone else, but Eleanor's tone held genuine curiosity rather than judgment. "It's hard to explain," Sophia admitted. "From the first time I saw it, I felt a connection. The orchard, especially. My grandfather was an orchardist in Michigan, and some of my happiest childhood memories are of helping him during harvest season." She hesitated before adding, "And honestly, it was one of the few properties remotely within my price range. At least I thought it was." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "And what would you have done with 120 acres and a farm that needs significant rehabilitation?" "We had plans," Ethan interjected, stepping forward. "Mom's researched heritage apple varieties that would grow well here. We were going to restore the orchard first, then convert part of the barn into a small cidery. Eventually, maybe open a farm stand or pick your own operation." Sophia glanced at her son in surprise. They had discussed these possibilities, but she hadn't realized how much thought he had put into them. "Ambitious," Eleanor commented, but without sarcasm. "And the farmhouse, it needs substantial work." We would have lived in the small caretaker's cottage while fixing up the main house room by room," Lily piped up. "I was going to have the bedroom with the window seat." Eleanor smiled at the girl's specificity. "That's the best bedroom in the house." "Good choice." As David Chen from Westridge Development approached, clearly intending to speak with Eleanor, she held up a hand to forestall him. "Mr. Chen, I'll be with you shortly." Chen retreated, looking somewhat annoyed at being dismissed. Eleanor turned back to Sophia. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Carter. Would you and your children join me for lunch at the diner? I'd like to discuss something with you." Confused but intrigued, Sophia nodded. "Of course. Though I should warn you, I'm not scheduled to work today, so the service might be a bit slower than usual." Eleanor chuckled. "I think we'll manage." As they walked toward their respective vehicles, Ethan leaned close to his mother. "What do you think she wants?" "I have no idea," Sophia admitted, "but I guess we're about to find out." The drive back to town was filled with speculation. Lily wondered if Eleanor might want to hire them as caretakers for the property. Ethan theorized that perhaps she wanted advice about the orchard, given Sophia's family background. Sophia herself tried to keep her expectations firmly in check. Whatever Eleanor Harmon wanted to discuss, it wouldn't change the fundamental reality. Willow Creek Farm would not be their home. When they arrived at Margaret's diner, Eleanor was already seated in a corner booth, a manila folder and legal pad on the table before her. She looked up as they approached, gesturing for them to join her. "I took the liberty of ordering coffee," she said. "And chocolate milk for Lily. Margaret mentioned it's your favorite." Lily's eyes widened at this personalized attention from a stranger. "Thank you, Mom." Once they were settled, Eleanor didn't waste time on small talk. "I'll be direct, Miss Carter. I buy distressed rural properties throughout this region. Normally, I renovate the houses, restore the land to productivity, and either sell them to carefully selected buyers or establish them as working educational farms." "You outbid Westridge," Sophia observed. They're not used to losing from what I hear. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. Westridge Development represents everything wrong with rural land management. They purchase properties like Willow Creek, bulldoze everything of historical and agricultural value, and replace them with generic housing developments that destroy the character of rural communities. Her passion was evident, reminding Sophia of her own grandfather's fierce protection of his orchard against encroaching development decades ago. "So you're a preservationist?" Sophia asked. "In a sense," Eleanor replied, "but not the type who wants to freeze everything in amber. I believe in adaptive reuse, in helping rural properties remain economically viable while preserving their essential character." She paused. "Which brings me to why I wanted to speak with you." She opened the manila folder and slid a document across the table. "This is a proposal for a rather unconventional arrangement regarding Willow Creek Farm. I'd like you to read it carefully." Sophia stared at the document Eleanor had placed before her, a mixture of confusion and wariness taking hold. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for it, unsure what to expect. This was turning into the strangest day of her life, first losing the auction for what she'd hoped would be her family's home, and now sitting across from the mysterious winner who seemed to know an unusual amount about her. "Take your time," Eleanor said, signaling to the waitress for more coffee. The proposal was typed on formal letterhead, Harmon Rural Preservation Trust. And as Sophia began reading, her confusion only deepened. Eleanor Harmon wasn't simply proposing to sell her the farm. She was offering a partnership, a mentorship, and what amounted to a complete career change all at once. Ethan leaned against his mother's shoulder, reading along silently. Lily fidgeted with her straw wrapper, too young to understand the legal language, but sensing the importance of the moment nonetheless. "I don't understand," Sophia finally said, looking up from the document. "You want me to live at Willow Creek and manage the restoration of the orchard? As your employee?" Eleanor shook her head. "Not as an employee, as a partner. My trust would retain ownership of the land itself, but you would have a 99-year lease on the property with an option to purchase after 5 years. You would own the business you create there outright. The trust would provide initial capital for restoration, equipment, and materials." "Why me?" Sophia asked bluntly. "You don't know me. I'm a waitress with no formal agricultural training, a single mother with barely enough savings to make the minimum bid on a foreclosed property." Eleanor's expression softened. "Sometimes the right experience doesn't come with degrees or certifications. Ms. Carter, you grew up working in your grandfather's orchard. You've spent 6 years demonstrating remarkable resilience and resourcefulness as a single parent. Your research into heritage apple varieties shows initiative and genuine passion." She took a sip of her coffee before continuing. "More importantly, you see Willow Creek for what it could be, not just what it is now. That vision is rarer than you might think." Sophia glanced at her children, noting Ethan's barely contained excitement and Lily's wide-eyed wonder. "This seems too good to be true," she said cautiously. "What's the catch?" Eleanor smiled slightly. "Direct. I appreciate that." She leaned forward. "Here's the catch, as you put it. The work will be intensive. Restoring that orchard, rehabilitating the buildings, establishing a viable business. It's not for the faint of heart. You'll work harder than you ever have at the diner, with no guaranteed outcome." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Sophia replied. I know, Eleanor said simply. That's why we're having this conversation. Before Sophia could respond, the diner's door swung open, and David Chen from Westridge Development entered, scanning the room until his gaze landed on their table. His expression tightened as he approached. Ms. Harmon, he said, without acknowledging the others, I'd like to discuss the Willow Creek property. Westridge is prepared to make you a generous offer, $200,000 cash, immediate closing. Eleanor didn't even look up. The property is not for sale, Mr. Chen, as I believe I made clear at the auction. Chen's professional demeanor slipped, slightly. You're making a mistake. That property is strategically located for our Valley View Estates development. The projected return on... Mr. Chen, Eleanor interrupted, finally looking at him. I'm having lunch and a private business discussion. Your offer is declined. The amount is irrelevant. The developer's face flushed. You can't seriously intend to restore that derelict property. The rehabilitation costs alone would be none of your concern, Eleanor finished for him. Good day, Mr. Chen. For a moment it seemed Chen might argue further, but something in Eleanor's steady gaze made him reconsider. With a tight nod he turned and left, the bell above the diner door jangling with his abrupt exit. He'll be back, Eleanor commented, returning her attention to Sophia. Westridge has purchased 6 properties in this county in the past year. They're piecing together land for a massive development. Luxury homes, boutique hotel, golf course. Willow Creek's water rights and location make it particularly valuable to them. Sophia looked down at the proposal again. And stopping them is part of why you're doing this. One of many reasons, Eleanor acknowledged, but not the primary one. My interest is in preserving agricultural heritage and creating sustainable rural businesses. Countering irresponsible development is a happy side effect. The waitress arrived with their lunch, club sandwiches for the adults, grilled cheese for Lily, and a burger for Ethan. As they ate, Eleanor outlined more details of her proposal. The trust would provide $175,000 for restoration and business development over 3 years. Sophia would need to submit quarterly reports and adhere to certain preservation and sustainability guidelines. She would retain creative control over the business direction as long as it's centered on the orchard's heritage varieties. The cottage is habitable now, Eleanor added. It needs cosmetic work, but the systems are sound. You could move in within 2 weeks. Ethan could barely contain himself. Mom, this is exactly what we wanted. It's perfect. Slow down, Sophia cautioned, though she felt the same excitement bubbling up inside her. There's a lot to consider. Such as, Eleanor prompted. For starters, my job. I can't just quit the diner and hope the orchard produces income immediately. The funding includes a modest living stipend for the first year, Eleanor pointed out. After that, the business should begin generating revenue, especially if you implement the farm-to-table component with local restaurants. Sophia tapped the paper with her finger. This mentions converting the old dairy barn into an event space. That's a massive undertaking. Phased over 3 years, Eleanor countered, starting with the cidery and the small barn, then farm stand, then event space as the business grows. She studied Sophia's expression. You're looking for problems, Miss Carter. That's not necessarily bad. It shows you're taking this seriously. But sometimes an opportunity comes along that defies conventional caution. Lily, who had been quiet until now, looked up from her grilled cheese. "Mom, remember what Dad always said? Life's biggest regrets are the chances we don't take." Sophia felt her breath catch. Tom had indeed said that often, usually before embarking on one of his adventurous plans. It was both comforting and painful to hear his words from their daughter's mouth. "Your father sounds like a wise man," Eleanor observed gently. "He was," Sophia said softly. "He would have loved Willow Creek." She squared her shoulders. "I need to think about this. It's not just my decision. It affects all of us." "Of course," Eleanor said, sliding a business card across the table. "Take the weekend. Look over the proposal carefully. Visit the property again. I've instructed the caretaker to give you full access. Call me on Monday with your decision." As Eleanor prepared to leave, she hesitated. "One more thing, Ms. Carter. While the business components of this arrangement are important, they're not why I chose you for this opportunity." "Why did you then?" Sophia asked. "Because when you looked at that rundown farm, you didn't see problems. You saw possibilities. That kind of vision can't be taught." With that, Eleanor left, the bell above the door chiming softly behind her. The weekend passed in a blur of research, discussions, and 2 more visits to Willow Creek Farm. Sophia brought a contractor friend to assess the cottage and main house. She called the Agricultural Extension Office to discuss the orchard's potential. She created spreadsheets, budgets, and business projections until her eyes burned from staring at her laptop screen. On their Sunday visit, as Ethan and Lily explored the property, Sophia found herself drawn to the main farmhouse again. Despite its dilapidated condition, there was something compelling about the old structure. Hand-hewn beams, wide plank floors, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, built-in cabinets crafted by someone who clearly took pride in their work. In what had once been the living room, Sophia noticed something odd, a slight difference in the wood pattern of the floorboards near the massive stone fireplace. Kneeling, she ran her fingers along the seam where the patterns changed. "Find something interesting?" came a voice from the doorway. It was Ray Hoffman, the caretaker Eleanor had mentioned. "Maybe," Sophia said, looking up. "The floor pattern changes here. Was there a repair at some point?" Ray, a weathered man in his 70s, crossed the room and knelt beside her with surprising agility. "Good eye, that's not a repair, though. It's a hidden compartment." "A what?" Ray grinned, pressing firmly on one edge of the irregular floorboard. To Sophia's astonishment, the opposite edge rose slightly. Ray gripped it and lifted, revealing a shallow space beneath. "Empty now," he said. "But according to local legend, old Joseph Willow, who built this place back in 1886, used to hide valuables here during uncertain times. Man distrusted banks, apparently with good reason. He kept his money here through the panic of 1893, while 3 local banks failed." Sophia peered into the empty space, oddly moved by this connection to the farm's original owner. "That's fascinating. This whole property is full of history like that," Ray said, replacing the floorboard. "Shame to see it sitting empty so long. Even bigger shame if those developers got hold of it." He fixed Sophia with a knowing look. "Ms. Harmon mentioned you might be taking it on. That true?" "I'm still deciding," Sophia admitted. Ray nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, this old place has been waiting for someone who sees its value, not just the land or buildings, but its story." He gestured around the room. "History like this deserves a future, don't you think?" His words stayed with Sophia as they finished touring the property. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat while Ethan stared thoughtfully out the window at the passing landscape. "You're going to say yes, aren't you?" he asked suddenly. Sophia glanced at him. "What makes you think that?" "The way you look at the place. Same way you used to look at those old photos of Grandpa's orchard. Like you're seeing something that isn't quite there yet, but could be." Sophia smiled. When had her son become so perceptive? "It's a huge risk, Ethan. If it doesn't work out, then we try something else," he interrupted. "But at least we tried. That's what Dad would say." "Your father didn't have to worry about providing stability for 2 children, Sophia pointed out gently. "We've had stability, Mum," Ethan replied. "What we haven't had is, I don't know, possibility, adventure, something that's ours, not just something we're getting by in." His words echoed in Sophia's mind as she lay awake that night, weighing options, calculating risks, and trying to quiet the persistent voice of doubt that had been her companion since Tom's death. By morning, she had made her decision. Monday dawned clear and crisp, the kind of autumn day that showcased Mapleton County's rolling hills and vibrant foliage to perfection. Sophia dropped the children at school with promises to update them immediately after her meeting with Eleanor, then drove to the address on the business card, a converted mill building on the edge of town that housed the offices of the Harmon Rural Preservation Trust. Eleanor was waiting in a simply furnished office overlooking the mill pond. Large maps covered one wall, with colored pins marking various properties throughout the region. Architectural drawings and farm plans were tacked to another wall. It wasn't what Sophia had expected from someone wealthy enough to outbid a development. "Company without hesitation. Have you made your decision, Ms. Carter?" Eleanor asked, after they had exchanged greetings. "I have," Sophia replied, taking a deep breath. "I accept your proposal with one condition." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "I want a clear path to ownership, not just a lease with an option. If I commit 5 years to restoring Willow Creek and establishing a successful business there, I want the opportunity to purchase the property at a fair market value, with credit for the improvements I've made." Eleanor studied her for a moment. "You're planning for the long term. I respect that." She nodded. "I'll have the agreement amended. Anything else?" "Yes," Sophia said. "I'd like to understand why you're really doing this. Not the general mission of your trust, but why you personally have dedicated yourself to saving these old farms. What's your connection to all this?" A shadow passed over Eleanor's face. She rose and walked to the window, looking out at the mill pond for several moments before responding. "I grew up on a farm much like Willow Creek," she finally said. 5 generations of Harmons had worked that land. I was an only child, expected to be the 6th generation. But I had other ideas. I left at 18 for college, then law school, then a corporate career that took me far from home. She turned back to Sophia. My parents continued running the farm, adapting as best they could to changing markets and economic pressures. When my father died, my mother struggled to keep it going alone. She asked me to come home, to help, to consider taking over. I was too busy with my career, too important in my own mind to step away. Eleanor's voice remained steady, but Sophia could hear the pain beneath the controlled exterior. 3 years later, the farm was foreclosed on. A development company much like Westridge purchased it at auction. They bulldozed the house I grew up in, the barn my great-grandfather built, the orchard where I climbed trees as a child. By the time I returned home, there was nothing left but street signs named after farm features that no longer existed. Orchard Lane, Harmon Ridge Drive. She sat back down, her composure restored. I was too late to save my family's heritage, but not too late to help preserve others. I made a great deal of money in corporate law, Ms. Carter. Now I use that money to right what I see as a profound wrong, the systematic erasure of rural agricultural heritage in the name of progress that serves very few at the expense of many. Sophia nodded, understanding now the passion that drove the older woman. Thank you for telling me. The past can't be changed, Eleanor said, but the future is still unwritten. Willow Creek Farm has stood empty for 3 years. In another 3. It could be a thriving business and a home for your family. That transformation, that's what drives me now. By the time Sophia left Eleanor's office, the amended agreement in hand, she felt a strange mixture of excitement and terror. She had just committed to a complete life change, exchanging the security of her waitressing job for the uncertain prospects of rehabilitating a historical farm. As she drove to the school to pick up her children and share the news, doubt began to creep in again. Was she being reckless, naive? Was she risking her children's stability on a romantic notion? Ethan and Lily's excitement when she told them the news temporarily pushed those worries aside. Their enthusiasm was contagious, their immediate dive into planning. Ethan researching apple varieties on his phone, Lily drawing pictures of her future bedroom, both touching and energizing. That evening, as Sophia began the monumental task of organizing their move, a knock came at the apartment door. It was Margaret from the diner, bearing a casserole and a concerned expression. "Word spreading about your new venture," Margaret said as Sophia invited her in. "Thought you might need dinner, what with all the planning you must be doing." "Thank you," Sophia said, genuinely grateful. "There's so much to organize. I gave my notice at the diner today." Margaret nodded, setting the casserole on the counter. "That's actually why I'm here. The staff took up a collection." She handed Sophia an envelope. "It's not much, but everyone wanted to contribute something to help you get started." Sophia opened the envelope to find several $100s in cash and a card signed by everyone at the diner. She blinked back sudden tears. "Margaret, this is too generous." "Nonsense," Margaret replied briskly, though her own eyes looked suspiciously moist. "You're taking on something important, not just for yourself, but for the whole county. That development company would have changed everything about this area, and not for the better." She looked around the small apartment. "Need help packing?" The offer of help opened a floodgate. Over the next week, as news of Sophia's partnership with the Harmon Trust spread through Mapleton County, people appeared at the apartment offering assistance, advice, and encouragement. Old Mr. Finnegan, who had farmed all his life before retiring, brought boxes of books on orchard management. The high school agriculture teacher offered to bring students to help clear overgrown areas of the property as a class project. 3 local carpenters volunteered a weekend to help make the cottage properly habitable before winter set in. "I don't understand," Sophia said to Margaret as they sorted through kitchen items, deciding what to pack first. "Why is everyone being so helpful? I barely know some of these people." Margaret looked up from wrapping plates in newspaper. "You're doing something that gives people hope, Sophia. This county has been watching family farms disappear one by one for years, replaced by developments that change the character of the place we love. You're pushing back against that tide, saying, 'This piece of our heritage matters.' That resonates with folks. 2 weeks after accepting Eleanor's proposal, Sophia stood in the small caretaker's cottage at Willow Creek Farm, surrounded by boxes and the mismatched furniture they had brought from the apartment. The place was modest, 2 bedrooms, a living area, kitchen and bathroom, but the volunteer carpenters had worked wonders. Walls had been repaired and painted, leaky plumbing fixed, new energy-efficient windows installed. It was far from luxurious, but it was clean, sound, and now somehow theirs. Through the kitchen window, Sophia could see Ethan in the nearest section of the orchard, carefully pruning dead branches under Ray Hoffman's guidance. Lily was in what had once been a kitchen garden, now overgrown but clearly salvageable, marking out rows with string and stakes for spring planting. A sense of both peace and purpose settled over Sophia. There would be challenges ahead, enormous ones, but for the first time in years she was moving towards something rather than simply surviving. The sound of tires on gravel drew her attention. Eleanor's car was coming up the drive. Unusual, since they had just met 2 days ago to finalize paperwork. Curious, Sophia stepped onto the small porch as Eleanor parked and emerged with a large rolled document under her arm. "I hope I'm not interrupting your settling in," Eleanor called in greeting. "Not at all," Sophia replied. "We're just getting organized. Would you like coffee? I managed to find the coffee maker in one of these boxes." "Perhaps later," Eleanor said, approaching the porch. "I've brought something I thought might interest you." She extended the rolled document. "The original plans for the farm, dated 1886. I found them in the county archives." Sophia accepted the roll with surprised delight. "That's incredible. Thank you." She carefully unfurled the edge, revealing detailed hand-drawn plans of the main house, barn, and outbuildings. "These will be invaluable for the restoration." "Look at the section on the main house," Eleanor suggested. "Page 3, I believe." Sophia gently separated the pages until she found the one Eleanor indicated. Detailed floor plans of the farmhouse. Her eyes widened as she spotted what Eleanor must have noticed. Clearly marked in the foundation plans was a large rectangular space labeled Storage Vault. "Is this what I think it is?" Sophia asked, her pulse quickening. Eleanor smiled. "According to the county historian, Joseph Willow installed a proper safe in the cellar when he built the house. Ray mentioned you found the small floor compartment, but this is something more substantial. The historian believes it may never have been discovered during later renovations, as it was concealed behind a false wall in the cellar." "A hidden safe," Sophia breathed, excitement bubbling up. That's straight out of a treasure hunt novel." "Indeed," Eleanor agreed. "And since you're now the caretaker of the property with full rights to any historical artifacts discovered during restoration, I thought you might want to investigate." The possibility of a hidden safe from the 1880s, potentially undiscovered for generations, sent Sophia's mind racing with questions. What might be inside? Documents, coins, family heirlooms, or perhaps nothing at all? Emptied long ago or never, used in the first place. Either way, it was a tangible connection to the farm's origins, a mystery waiting to be solved. "Mom!" Lily called, racing toward the house with the boundless energy of a 10-year-old. "Ray says there's a secret trapdoor in the barn that goes to an underground room. Can we look at it, please?" Sophia laughed. "Apparently Willow Creek has more secrets than we realized." "Old farms often do," Eleanor said. "Each generation leaves its mark, sometimes hidden, waiting for someone who cares enough to discover it. She glanced at her watch. I should let you get back to settling in. I just wanted to deliver those plans personally. As Eleanor prepared to leave, Sophia impulsively reached out and touched her arm. Thank you. Not just for the plans, but for everything. For believing in me when I barely believed in myself. Eleanor's customary reserve softened. You remind me of myself at your age, Miss Carter, before I made the mistake of walking away from my roots. Perhaps that's part of why I chose you, for this project, a chance to see a different path taken. After Eleanor departed, Sophia carefully re-rolled the plans and set them aside for proper examination later. Through the window, she could see Ethan and Lily now huddled with Ray near the barn, clearly excited about the prospect of hidden rooms and secret passages. The road ahead would be difficult. The orchard would need years of work before reaching full production. The buildings required extensive restoration. A business would need to be built from the ground up. But standing in this small cottage, watching her children embrace their new home with such enthusiasm, Sophia felt something she hadn't experienced since before Tom's death. The quiet confidence that came with finding exactly where you were meant to be. And somewhere beneath the floorboards of the old farmhouse, a century-old safe waited to be discovered, perhaps empty, perhaps holding treasures, but certainly holding stories. Tomorrow they would begin searching for it. Tonight they would unpack, make beds, and have their first dinner in their new home. Willow Creek Farm had stood for generations, witnessing the ebb and flow of rural life, seasons of bounty and hardship, families coming and going. Now it would witness something new, resurrection, not just of buildings and orchards, but of hope, purpose, and possibility. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light across the old farmhouse as Sophia, Ethan, and Lily stood in the damp cellar examining the stone foundation wall. According to the original plans Eleanor had provided, the hidden safe should be located behind a section of the east wall, concealed by what appeared on the drawings as a false stone panel. It should be right here, Sophia said, running her hand along the rough stonework. Unlike the rest of the cellar walls, which were irregular fieldstone, this section featured more uniformly cut blocks. The question is how to access it. Ray Hoffman, who had joined their treasure hunt with the enthusiasm of someone half his age, shone his flashlight along the seams between the stones. Joseph Willow was known for his craftsmanship. If he built a hidden compartment, it wouldn't be obvious, but it wouldn't be impossible to access either. Ethan crouched down, examining the floor where it met the wall. Look at this, he said, pointing to what appeared to be slight wear marks in the dirt floor. Something's been moved here, repeatedly. Sophia knelt beside him, brushing away decades of dust from a flat stone near the base of the wall. As the dirt cleared, a small, almost imperceptible iron ring became visible, embedded in the stone. Is that what I think it is? Lily whispered, the flashlight beam reflecting in her wide eyes. Only one way to find out, Sophia replied, grasping the ring and pulling gently. At first nothing happened, the ring seeming fused to the stone by time and dampness. Ethan joined his mother, adding his strength, and slowly the stone began to move, grating against its neighbors as it slid forward. Behind the stone was a small lever. Ray whistled low. Ingenious. Simple mechanical trigger, probably connected to a counterweight system. Should we pull it? Sophia asked, looking to Ray for guidance. "That's what levers are for," he replied with a grin. Sophia gripped the rusted iron handle and pulled. Downward. For a moment nothing happened, then came a grinding sound from within the wall. Slowly, a section of the stonework, about 3 feet square, moved inward and then slid to the side, revealing a recessed cavity. And there it was. A cast-iron safe, its once black surface now rusted and discolored, but still solid, the ornate willow nameplate clearly visible across its front. "It's real," Sophia breathed, almost unable to believe what they were seeing. "It's actually here." "Can we open it?" Lily asked, practically bouncing with excitement. Ray shone his flashlight on the old combination dial. "That's a champion, model from the 1880s. Good craftsmanship, but the mechanism is likely seized after all these years. Might need a locksmith." "Wait," Ethan said, studying the original house plans they had brought down with them. "Look at this notation in the margin." He pointed to faded handwriting, almost invisible in the corner of the blueprint. "It looks like numbers, 1842-7. Sophia peered at the faint notation. Could be the combination. "Worth a try," Ray said, "though don't get your hopes up. These old mechanisms can be temperamental even when regularly used, let alone after sitting untouched for who knows how long." Sophia knelt before the safe, wiping dust from the dial with her sleeve. The mechanism felt stiff, but not completely. Frozen as she carefully turned it, right to 18, left to 42, right to 7. At the final number, she tried the handle. Nothing happened. "Maybe it's not the combination after all," Ethan said, disappointment evident in his voice. "Or maybe—" Sophia tried again, this time turning the dial with more force at each number. When she reached the final position and pulled the handle, she was rewarded with a faint click, followed by the groan of long-dormant metal as the door reluctantly began to open. The hinges protested after their century of disuse, but the heavy door swung outward, revealing the safe's dark interior. Ray directed his flashlight inside, illuminating the contents. There was no pile of gold coins or glittering jewels, as Lily had secretly hoped. Instead, they found a stack of leather-bound ledgers, several bundles of yellowed papers tied with faded ribbon, a small wooden box, and a cloth sack that clinked when Ray carefully lifted it. "Nothing of significant monetary value at first glance," Ray commented, "but historically could be priceless." They carefully removed the items, bringing them upstairs to the kitchen table in the cottage, where they could examine them properly. Sophia felt an odd sense of reverence as she laid out the artifacts from a different era, tangible connections to the man who had built this farm and the family who had worked it for generations. The ledgers proved to be farm records spanning from 1886 to 1924, detailing crop yields, livestock records, expenses and profits in meticulous handwriting. The bundles of papers included correspondence, deeds, and what appeared to be agricultural research. Joseph Willow had apparently been experimenting with apple varieties, grafting techniques, and storage methods well ahead of his time. The cloth sack contained a small collection of gold coins, not a fortune, but certainly valuable both historically and monetarily. The wooden box, however, held what would prove to be the most significant find. "It's a journal," Sophia said softly, as she opened the ornately carved box to reveal a leather-bound book with J. Willow embossed on the cover. "And look at this." Tucked inside the journal was an envelope addressed simply, "To the future steward of Willow Creek." With trembling fingers, Sophia opened the unsealed envelope and removed a single sheet of paper, the handwriting strong and clear despite its age. "To whoever finds this," she read aloud. "If you are reading these words, you have discovered the legacy of Willow Creek Farm, and I hope have taken up its stewardship. I established this farm in 1886 with the belief that this land, properly tended, could support generations to come. In this safe, you will find the financial history of our endeavors, research that may prove valuable to future orchardists, and a modest emergency fund that has helped our family weather several economic storms. The true wealth of Willow Creek, however, lies not in gold, but in the land itself, specifically in the North Orchard, where I have cultivated what I believe to be unique apple varieties that combine the best qualities of durability, flavor, and disease resistance. It is my hope that whoever discovers this vault values not just its monetary contents, but the agricultural heritage it represents. May Willow Creek continue to bear fruit for generations yet unborn. With respect and optimism for the future, Joseph Willow, 1924. A profound silence fell over the kitchen as Sophia finished reading. The letter, written nearly a century ago, seemed to speak directly to their present circumstances, as if Joseph Willow had somehow known his farm would one day need resurrection and had left behind not just his possessions, but his vision. "The North Orchard," Ethan said finally. "That's the most overgrown section, the one we haven't even properly surveyed yet." "Unique apple varieties," Sophia repeated, her mind racing with possibilities. "If he developed proprietary varieties that have survived all these years." Ray nodded, understanding the implications immediately. Heritage apple varieties are experiencing a renaissance. Cideries, gourmet food companies, farm-to-table restaurants, they're all searching for unique historical apples with character you can't find in commercial varieties. "We need to examine that orchard immediately," Sophia said, energized by this unexpected discovery. "If Joseph Willow's experimental trees are still alive, it could completely change our restoration priorities and potentially provide a unique market advantage." The North Orchard proved to be more challenging to access than anticipated. Decades of neglect had allowed wild growth to nearly reclaim the land, with volunteer saplings, brambles, and vines creating a nearly impenetrable thicket around and between what had once been orderly rows of apple trees. Undeterred, Sophia organized a weekend clearing expedition. Word of the hidden safe and Joseph Willow's letter spread quickly through Mapleton County, and what had been planned as a small family project unexpectedly transformed into a community event. Saturday morning found 20 volunteers arriving at Willow Creek Farm with chainsaws, brush cutters, rakes, and determination. "Never seen this much interest in clearing brush before," Ray commented as he helped organize the volunteers into teams. "Amazing what a 100-year-old mystery will do." Among the volunteers was Dr. Patricia Oakes, a pomologist from the State University's Agricultural Extension Office, who had heard about the possibility of undocumented heritage apple varieties and driven 2 hours to investigate. "If these trees have indeed survived without human intervention for decades, they could possess remarkable genetic resilience," Dr. Oakes explained as she followed Sophia through the gradually clearing paths. "That alone would make them valuable for breeding programs, not to mention any unique flavor profiles they might offer." By Sunday afternoon, the transformation was remarkable. What had appeared to be hopeless overgrowth now revealed itself as approximately 50 ancient apple trees, gnarled, unpruned, and struggling beneath vines, but unquestionably alive. Among them, Dr. Oakes identified 7 trees that didn't match any known varieties in her extensive catalogue. These could absolutely be Joseph Willow's experimental varieties, she confirmed, carefully collecting leaf samples for DNA analysis. They've survived drought, disease, and decades of neglect. That's exceptional resilience. As the volunteers departed, tired but satisfied with their weekend's work, Sophia found herself standing alone in the center of the newly revealed orchard. The ancient trees, now freed from their strangling competitors, seemed to stand taller, their twisted branches reaching toward the late afternoon sunlight with a kind of dignified perseverance that moved her unexpectedly. These trees had outlived. Their planter witnessed the passage of generations, survived abandonment, and endured. Now they were being given a second chance, just as she was. The parallel wasn't lost on Sophia. "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke into her reflections. "Dr. Oakes wants to know if she can come back next weekend with a grafting team. She says if these are truly unique varieties, we should start propagating them immediately to ensure they're preserved." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. As word of the Willow Creek discoveries spread, interest in the farm grew. Dr. Oakes confirmed that at least 5 of the mysterious trees were indeed undocumented varieties, and preliminary taste tests of the few apples they bore that autumn revealed exceptional qualities. One with intense aromatics reminiscent of tropical fruit, another with a perfect balance of sweetness and acidity, a third with unusual spice notes unlike anything in commercial production. Eleanor visited regularly, clearly delighted by the unexpected historical discoveries and the accelerating restoration timeline. During one such visit, as they walked the perimeter of the newly cleared North Orchard, she made a suggestion that would alter the trajectory of Sophia's business plan. "What if," Eleanor proposed, "instead of waiting years to develop the cidery, as originally planned, we expedite it? These rediscovered willow varieties provide a unique marketing angle we hadn't anticipated. Rather than positioning you as yet another heritage apple producer, you become the exclusive source of resurrection varieties presumed lost for nearly a century." Sophia considered the idea, mentally recalculating timelines and budgets. The key small barn would need significant work to convert to a cidery. We weren't planning to tackle that until year 2 or 3. The trust could advance additional funds for that specific purpose, Eleanor offered. An opportunity this unique justifies accelerating certain aspects of the plan. That evening, after the children were asleep, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with Joseph Willow's journal, which she had been carefully reading each night. His detailed observations of daily farm life, interspersed with philosophical reflections on stewardship and legacy, had become something of a guidebook, not for agricultural techniques, which had evolved considerably since his time, but for the mindset required to approach farming as more than just a business. One entry in particular had resonated with her. April 18, 1898, faced significant crop damage from last night's unexpected frost. Stevens down the road lost everything, and talks of selling. I understand his despair, but cannot share his surrender. When one chooses to work with the land rather than simply on it, one must accept both abundance and adversity as part of the same covenant. It is not merely that we endure hardship, but how we respond to it that determines whether we merely occupy land or truly cultivate it. As Sophia considered Eleanor's proposal to accelerate the cidery development, she found herself applying Joseph's philosophy. The discovery of his experimental apple varieties wasn't merely good fortune. It was an opportunity that carried responsibility to preserve and share something unique that might otherwise have been lost forever. The decision crystallized. They would indeed fast-track the cidery development. The Willow Resurrection series of heritage ciders would become their flagship product, telling the story not just of apples, but of persistence, rediscovery, and renewal. By early November, the small barn's renovation was underway, with local contractors working to transform the sturdy old structure into a small batch cidery while preserving its historical character. Dr. Oakes and her team had successfully taken dozens of grafts from the unique varieties, ensuring their genetic preservation regardless of what happened to the ancient trees themselves. The first proper harvest would still be years away, but with careful management and grafting onto established rootstock, they might see limited production within 18 months. Sophia immersed herself in learning cider production, attending workshops and consulting with established craft cideries. Ethan, displaying an unexpected talent for graphic design, began developing label concepts for their future products, incorporating elements of Joseph Willow's original farm designs. Even Lily contributed, carefully pressing flowers and leaves from the farm to create illustrated cards telling the Willow Creek story, which would eventually accompany each bottle of cider sold. "People aren't just buying a drink," she explained with precocious insight. "They're buying our story." As Thanksgiving approached, their first major holiday at Willow Creek, Sophia realized how dramatically their lives had changed in just a few months. The small cottage, initially Spartan and unfamiliar, had become undeniably home. School. Mornings were no longer the rushed urban scramble they had once been, but now involved collecting eggs from their small flock of chickens and walking the orchard's perimeter before the bus arrived. Ethan had joined the high school's Future Farmers of America chapter and was thriving in ways she hadn't seen since before Tom's death. Lily had made new friends and spent hours outdoors, developing a detailed map of the property's wildlife habitats. Sophia herself had transformed as well. The constant low-grade anxiety that had been her companion for years, worry about bills, job security, providing opportunities for her children, hadn't disappeared, but had changed in character. The challenges she faced now were tangible, addressable, and purposeful. She worked harder than she ever had at the diner, often collapsing into bed exhausted, but it was the satisfying exhaustion of creation rather than the hollow fatigue of merely surviving. Their Thanksgiving table reflected this transformation. Margaret and several other friends from town joined them in the cottage, which was crowded but warm with conversation and laughter. The meal featured vegetables from their own kitchen garden, eggs from their chickens, and apple pie made with fruit from the orchard's surviving standard varieties. "A toast," Margaret proposed, raising her glass, "to Sophia and her vision for Willow Creek, and to Joseph Willow," Ray added, "who planted trees for a future he would never see." "And to Westridge Development, losing their bid," Ethan said, with teenage bluntness, earning laughter and emphatic agreement from the adults. As the evening progressed and dishes were cleared, Eleanor, who had initially declined the invitation but ultimately relented, drew Sophia aside. "I have something to show you," she said, retrieving a folder from her bag. "The preliminary marketing study for Willow Resurrection cider. I had a consultant analyze the potential market." Sophia opened the folder and found herself looking at projections that exceeded her most optimistic estimates. "This can't be right," she said, scanning the numbers again. "These revenue projections for year 3 are entirely plausible," Eleanor completed the thought. "The combination of authentic historical provenance, unique flavor profiles, and the compelling rediscovery narrative creates what marketers call a premium positioning opportunity. In simple terms, restaurants and specialty retailers will pay a significant premium for a product with this story and exclusivity." "This would change everything," Sophia said, still processing the implications. "At these numbers, we could accelerate the main house restoration, expand production more quickly, maybe even add an on-site tasting room earlier than planned." Eleanor nodded. "The potential is certainly there, but I would caution against expanding too rapidly. Quality and authenticity are your unique advantages. Scale too quickly, and you risk undermining both." Their conversation was interrupted by Lily calling everyone to the living room, where she had organized an impromptu Thanksgiving talent show. As Sophia watched her children and their new community, sharing music, stories, and laughter, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected path that had led them here. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Sophia bundled up and walked to the main farmhouse. She'd been spending several hours each week carefully sorting through the contents of Joseph Willow's safe, cataloging items and researching their significance. The process had created an unexpected connection to the man whose vision had established this place nearly 140 years earlier. In the quiet of the old house, illuminated only by battery-powered lanterns until electricity could be restored, Sophia opened Joseph's journal to an entry she had discovered earlier that week. November 28th, 1889, Thanksgiving. Reflected today on the curious nature of gratitude, how it expands to fill whatever vessel holds it. This farm was raw potential when we arrived, much work yet before us. Now, 3 years hence, we have a home, bearing orchards, and though challenges remain aplenty, I find myself thankful not despite the work ahead, but because of it. To build something enduring requires effort worthy of that endurance. The words seemed to span the century between them, a hand reaching back through time with wisdom that felt freshly relevant. Sophia ran her fingers over the faded ink, feeling a kinship with this man she would never meet, but whose legacy she was now continuing. The sound of gravel crunching outside pulled her from these reflections. Through the dusty window, she could see headlights approaching, unusual for nearly 10 p.m. on Thanksgiving. As the vehicle came closer, she recognized David Chen's car from Westridge Development. Wary but curious, Sophia stepped onto the porch as Chen parked and emerged with a portfolio under his arm. His expression was difficult to read in the dim light, not quite hostile, but certainly not friendly. "Ms. Carter," he called in greeting, "I apologize for the late hour and the holiday intrusion, but I've been trying to reach you for days." "Mr. Chen," Sophia acknowledged coolly, "what brings Westridge to Willow Creek on Thanksgiving night?" Chen approached the porch, but remained at the bottom of the steps, perhaps sensing that he was not welcome to come closer. "Business, Ms. Carter. Specifically a proposal I'm authorized to present directly to you, bypassing the Harmon Trust entirely." "I'm not interested in selling, Mr. Chen. I thought that was clear." "You misunderstand," Chen replied, his tone shifting to something more conciliatory. We're not looking to acquire the property outright anymore. We're offering a development partnership. He extended the portfolio. Our research indicates that your heritage apple varieties could have significant market value. Westridge is prepared to invest $3 million to develop a commercial-scale cidery operation here, along with a boutique hospitality venue. You would retain ownership of the intellectual property and receive substantial royalties. Sophia didn't take the portfolio. And what would happen to the rest of the farm? The historical buildings, the restoration plan? Chen hesitated briefly. The development would require utilizing approximately 80% of the acreage for more economically productive purposes. The main house could be preserved as the centerpiece of a country club facility. The original orchard section would become a themed attraction within a larger residential community. So, essentially, you want to turn Joseph Willow's agricultural legacy into a decorative element for a luxury development, Sophia summarized, not bothering to keep the disapproval from her voice. Commercialize the apple varieties while bulldozing most of what he built. I'm offering you financial security, Ms. Carter, Chen said, a hint of frustration breaking through his professional demeanor. The Harmon Trust's approach may be idealistic, but it's economically marginal at best. Our proposal provides guaranteed returns without the years of uncertainty and labor ahead of you. For a moment, Sophia allowed herself to imagine the path Chen was offering: immediate financial stability, professional development of the business, none of the back-breaking work and anxiety that came with building something from the ground up. It was tempting in its simplicity, its certainty. Then her eyes drifted to the worn leather journal in her hands, and Joseph Willow's words echoed in her mind. To build something enduring requires effort worthy of that endurance. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Chen," she said finally. "But I'm not interested. Willow Creek isn't just land and buildings to be repurposed for maximum profit. It's a heritage that deserves to be honored, not commodified." Chen's jaw tightened. "Ms. Carter, you're making a significant financial mistake. Our projections aren't the only measure of value," Sophia interrupted. "You see this place as an asset. I see it as a responsibility and an opportunity to build something meaningful. We have fundamentally different visions, Mr. Chen, and mine isn't for sale." Chen studied her for a long moment before nodding curtly. "As you wish. But should you reconsider, our offer remains open until the end of the year." He returned to his car without another word, the portfolio still under his arm. As the headlights disappeared down the drive, Sophia remained on the porch, Joseph's journal clutched to her chest. The encounter with Chen had clarified something important. Her commitment to Willow Creek wasn't just about business opportunity or even providing for her family. It had become about honoring a legacy, about stewardship in its deepest sense. She looked out over the darkened farm, imagining Joseph Willow standing in this same spot a century earlier, perhaps also pondering the future of the land he had cultivated. Their circumstances were different, separated by time and experience, but they shared a vision of this place that transcended mere ownership or profit. Tomorrow would bring more work, endless work, but tonight, in the quiet aftermath of Thanksgiving, Sophia felt a profound certainty that they were on the right path. The hidden safe hadn't contained gold or jewels, but something far more, valuable, a connection to the past that illuminated the way forward. Spring arrived at Willow Creek Farm with an explosive energy that transformed the landscape almost overnight. The apple trees in the main orchard, properly pruned during winter for the first time in years, erupted in a magnificent display of blossoms that surpassed Sophia's most optimistic expectations. The North Orchard, home to Joseph Willow's experimental varieties, showed promising signs of revival after careful restoration work. Standing amid the sea of white and pink blossoms, Sophia took a rare moment to simply breathe and appreciate how far they had come since that fateful auction day 6 months earlier. The farm was still very much a work in progress, with the main house renovation only partially complete, but signs of renewal were everywhere. The small barn had been successfully converted into a cidery, with gleaming stainless steel tanks now, sharing space with the original wooden beams. Dr. Oakes's team had successfully propagated dozens of trees from Joseph's unique varieties, creating a nursery of saplings that would eventually expand production. The cottage garden was now orderly rows of vegetables and herbs, rather than the tangle of weeds it had been. "Thinking deep thoughts?" Eleanor asked, approaching through the orchard with a tablet in hand. Her visits had become weekly occurrences, as the project gained momentum. "Just appreciating the blossoms," Sophia replied. "I knew intellectually that the orchard would bloom, but seeing it like this—" She gestured to the canopy of flowers stretching across the hillside. "It's more beautiful than I imagined." Eleanor nodded, understanding the sentiment. Beauty and functionality in perfect harmony. That's what makes orchards special. She held up her tablet. "Speaking of functionality, I have some news you'll want to see. The DNA analysis of Joseph's apple varieties has been completed." Sophia took the tablet, scrolling through the scientific report with growing excitement. "So they're definitively unique, not matches to any known varieties." "Completely unique," Eleanor confirmed. "Furthermore, 2 of them show genetic markers associated with disease resistance that are particularly valuable for modern breeding programs. The university is already fielding inquiries from commercial nurseries interested in licensing rights." "Licensing?" Sophia looked up from the report. "I hadn't even considered that possibility." "You own the trees and their genetics," Eleanor pointed out. "If commercial nurseries want to propagate these varieties for widespread distribution, they need your permission. That represents a potential revenue stream independent of your cider production." The implications were significant. While the Willow Resurrection cider brand remained their primary focus, licensing the genetics of Joseph's apples to nurseries could provide immediate income, while the orchard continued its slow journey back to full production. "There's more," Eleanor continued as they walked toward the cidery. "The Historical Society completed their assessment of Joseph's papers. They're quite excited about his detailed records of agricultural practices from the late 19th century. They're proposing a small exhibit at the County Museum, which would include promoting Willow Creek as a living agricultural heritage site." Sophia smiled at the thought of Joseph Willow receiving recognition after all these years. His meticulous records had proved invaluable not just for their restoration efforts, but apparently for historical research as well. As they approached the cidery, the sound of hammering greeted them. The construction crew was completing work on what would become a small tasting room, an addition to their business plan made possible by the accelerated timeline Eleanor had proposed after the discovery of Joseph's apple varieties. Inside, Ray was supervising the delivery of their first proper cider press, a refurbished model that struck the right balance between authenticity and efficiency. Ethan, who had developed a passionate interest in the cider-making process, was helping position the equipment, looking more confident and engaged than Sophia could remember since before his father's death. "The first test batch is scheduled for next week," Ray informed them proudly. "Using conventional apples, of course. The heritage crop won't be ready for months, but it will let us calibrate the equipment and begin developing our processes." As Sophia inspected the new setup, her phone chimed with a message. It was from Margaret at the diner, and its brevity conveyed urgency. "Westridge presenting to County Commission right now. You should be here." Sophia showed the message to Eleanor, whose expression immediately darkened. "We should go," the older woman said. "Chen has been suspiciously quiet since his Thanksgiving visit." They arrived at the county courthouse 15 minutes later to find the commission meeting room packed with residents. David Chen stood at the podium, projecting sleek architectural renderings of a development called Willow Ridge Estates, a name clearly chosen to evoke the farm without directly appropriating it. Phase 1 includes 46 luxury homes on generous lots, preserving much of the natural landscape, Chen was explaining as they slipped into seats at the back. Phase 2 would add the country club, golf course, and boutique hotel, creating approximately 120 full-time jobs for county residents. Commissioner Walker, a fourth-generation farmer himself, looked skeptical. And this development would be located where exactly? These renderings showed terrain very similar to the northeast quadrant of the county. Chen nodded smoothly. "We've secured options on 6 properties in that area, totaling approximately 800 acres. We're in final negotiations for 2 additional properties that would complete the footprint we need." Sophia leaned toward Eleanor. "That's all around Willow Creek," she whispered. "They're trying to surround us." Eleanor nodded grimly. "Classic encirclement strategy. They can't get your property, so they're attempting to control everything around it." "What about water rights?" Commissioner Johnson asked. "Development of that scale would significantly impact the watershed that feeds several existing farms." "Our environmental impact study addresses those concerns," Chen replied, indicating a thick document on the commissioner's table. "We're proposing a state-of-the-art water reclamation system that would actually improve watershed health compared to current agricultural usage." From where Sophia sat, she could see several neighboring farmers exchanging concerned glances. Water in Mapleton County was a perpetually sensitive issue, with farms that had operated for generations holding historic rights that newer developments often challenged. As Chen continued his presentation, outlining tax benefits and infrastructure improvements, Eleanor scribbled calculations on a notepad. "They're moving faster than I anticipated," she murmured. "They must have been working on this plan since they lost the bid for your property." When the public comment period opened, Eleanor was the first to approach the podium. The transformation from her usually reserved demeanor to commanding public speaker was remarkable. "Commissioners, I'm Eldina Harmon of the Rural Preservation Trust," she began. "While Westridge's presentation is certainly polished, I urge you to look beyond the attractive renderings to the actual impact this development would have on Mapleton County's agricultural heritage and water ecosystem." She proceeded to systematically challenge key points of Chen's presentation, citing specific county ordinances, historical water rights precedents, and environmental protection statutes that the development would potentially violate. Her command of both legal details and local history clearly impressed the commissioners. Furthermore, she continued, the proposed development would effectively isolate Willow Creek Farm, a property currently undergoing historical restoration, as an agricultural heritage site. This appears to be a deliberate strategy to pressure the farm into eventually selling by surrounding it with incompatible land uses. Chen immediately requested an opportunity to respond, his professional composure showing cracks for the first time. Ms. Harmon's characterization is both inaccurate and unfair. Westridge has designed Willow Ridge Estates specifically to complement the rural character of the region, including preserving agricultural viewsheds. By replacing working farms with decorative landscaping, Eleanor countered. That's not preservation, it's appropriation of rural aesthetic without rural function. The debate continued for another hour, with several local farmers and business owners offering comments both for and against the development. The economic benefits Chen promised were appealing to many, particularly those struggling with the county's limited job opportunities. Yet concerns about water rights, traffic, and the fundamental character of the community resonated deeply with others. When Sophia finally approached the podium, she felt a moment of panic. Public speaking had never been her strength, and following Eleanor's articulate presentation seemed particularly daunting. But as she looked out at the crowd, she saw many familiar faces, people who had helped clear the orchard, who had offered advice and encouragement, who had believed in Willow Creek's potential when it was still more dream than reality. "My name is Sophia Carter," she began, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "6 months ago, I was a waitress with no connection to farming beyond childhood memories of my grandfather's orchard. Today, I'm the caretaker of Willow Creek Farm, a property that has taught me more about community, perseverance, and meaningful work than I ever imagined possible." She described discovering Joseph Willow's safe, the unique apple varieties that had survived against all odds, and the emerging business that would preserve this agricultural heritage while creating sustainable economic value. What I've learned from Joseph Willow's journal and from working this land is that true stewardship means balancing present needs with future responsibilities. The development Mr. Chen proposes offers quick economic benefits, but at what long-term cost to our water resources, agricultural capacity, and community identity? Looking directly at the commissioners, she concluded, "I'm not opposed to progress or change, but I believe progress should build upon our strengths rather than replacing them. Mapleton County's strength has always been its agricultural heritage and the people who maintain it. I ask you to consider whether Willow Ridge Estates would enhance that heritage or simply consume it." The commission ultimately took no action that day, scheduling further hearings and requesting additional environmental impact studies before making any zoning decisions. As the crowd dispersed, Sophia found herself surrounded by neighbors offering thanks for her comments and updates on their own small farms. "You did well in there," Eleanor said as they walked back to the car. "Speaking from authentic experience is powerful." The commissioners were listening. "But will it make a difference?" Sophia asked. "Westridge has resources, professional lobbyists, fancy presentations. We have—" "What? Passion and history?" "Don't underestimate those," Eleanor replied. "And don't underestimate what you've already built at Willow Creek. Chen dismisses it as economically marginal, but he's wrong. What's emerging there is precisely the kind of sustainable, heritage-based business that represents rural America's future. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of activity. The first test batch of cider, made with conventional apples while waiting for their heritage crop, proved surprisingly successful, with Ray's expertise and Ethan's enthusiasm combining to create a product that exceeded Sophia's expectations. Local restaurants expressed immediate interest, and Margaret offered to feature it exclusively at the diner. Meanwhile, the controversy over Westridge's proposed development intensified. County commission meetings became standing-room-only affairs as residents debated the community's future. The local newspaper devoted front-page coverage to the issue, including a feature on Willow Creek's restoration that highlighted the discovery of Joseph's unique apple varieties. Public opinion seemed increasingly divided between those who saw Westridge offering much-needed economic development and those concerned about preserving the county's agricultural character. The commission, clearly feeling pressure from both sides, delayed their decision repeatedly while requesting more information. On a warm May morning, as Sophia sorted apples for their second test batch of cider, Margaret arrived at the farm with news. "Chen's been meeting privately with farmers all around you," she reported, "offering prices well above market value for their land. 3 have already sold options from what I hear." Sophia leaned against the sorting table, processing this information. "He's not giving up, is he?" "Not his style," Margaret replied. "Word is, Westridge has invested too much in the planning to back out now. They'll keep pressing until they get their development approved." Later that day, as if to confirm Margaret's intelligence, David Chen himself appeared at the cottage door. His demeanor was all business, but Sophia detected an underlying tension in his carefully controlled expression. "Ms. Carter," he began without preamble, "I'll be direct. The situation has evolved since our last conversation. Westridge has secured options on approximately 700 acres surrounding Willow Creek. Our development will proceed, with or without the county's immediate approval." "Then why are you here?" Sophia asked, not inviting him inside. "Because your property remains the centerpiece of our ideal plan." He produced a document from his portfolio. "This is our final offer. $5 million for Willow Creek Farm, with guarantees that the main house will be preserved as a historical building, and the original North Orchard maintained as a heritage garden. You would retain rights to Joseph Willow's apple varieties and could continue production off-site." The figure was staggering, far more than the property could possibly be worth by conventional valuation. For a brief moment, Sophia allowed herself to consider what such a sum would mean for her family's future. College funds secured, financial stability guaranteed, the endless work and uncertainty of building a business from scratch, replaced by immediate security. "Why so much?" she asked, genuinely curious. "The property isn't worth anywhere near that amount." "Its strategic value to our development plan exceeds its intrinsic value," Chen admitted. "Additionally, the publicity surrounding your restoration project and the discovery of those heritage apples has created complications for our approval process. Acquiring the property resolves those issues." Sophia studied Chen's face, understanding now that the offer wasn't just about acquiring land, it was about acquiring a story. Westridge wanted to incorporate Willow Creek's narrative of agricultural heritage and historical discovery into their development marketing, neutralizing opposition by appearing to preserve what many residents now saw as a community asset. "I need to think about this," she said finally, "and discuss it with my family." Chen nodded, clearly having expected this response. "Of course, but I should note that the offer expires in 72 hours. Westridge's board meets next week to finalize Phase 1 planning, with or without Willow Creek included." After he departed, Sophia sat alone at the kitchen table, the offer document before her, its figures seeming to grow larger the longer she stared at them. $2.5 million, security, certainty, an end to the constant worry about whether their fledgling business would succeed, whether the restoration costs would exceed projections, whether the heritage apples would perform as hoped in commercial production. When Ethan and Lily returned from school, she shared Chen's offer, watching their reactions carefully. To her surprise, both children immediately rejected the idea. "But we've just started," Lily protested. "The trees are blooming, and my garden is growing, and we were going to open the tasting room next month." "And what about Joseph's apples?" Ethan added. "Chen says they'd preserve the North Orchard as a heritage garden, but that's just for show. They wouldn't actually continue his work or honor what he was trying to do." Their immediate commitment to the farm touched Sophia deeply. In just 6 months, this place had become more than property to them. It had become home, purpose, identity. She realized with sudden clarity that it had done the same for her. What had begun as a desperate gamble for affordable housing had evolved into a calling that engaged her mind, body, and spirit in ways her previous life never had. That evening, she called Eleanor to discuss the offer, and was surprised to find the older woman didn't immediately dismiss it. "It's a very significant sum," Eleanor acknowledged. "And while my trust would be disappointed to lose Willow Creek as a preservation project, our agreement gives you the right to sell if you choose. I wouldn't fault you for accepting, especially given the children's future needs." "But you wouldn't take it, would you?" Sophia asked, sensing the unspoken thought. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "No," she finally said, "but my circumstances are very different from yours. I have financial security that allows me certain choices. You need to make this decision based on what's best for your family." After the call, Sophia found herself drawn to the main farmhouse, where restoration work on the first floor was nearing completion. The parlor where they had discovered Joseph's hidden safe had been carefully renovated, preserving original details, while making the space functional for modern use. They planned to open it to visitors as part of tours that would eventually include the cidery and orchard. In this room, a century earlier, Joseph Willow had made countless decisions that shaped the farm's destiny. Had he ever faced a crossroads like this? Had he ever been tempted to take the easier, more certain path? Sophia opened his journal to an entry she had marked weeks earlier. June 12, 1899. Received an offer today from Western Consolidated. Fruit to purchase the entire North Orchard harvest at a guaranteed price, regardless of quality. The certainty is tempting after last year's market fluctuations. Yet their requirement that I abandon my experimental grafting in favor of their preferred commercial varieties gives me pause. Security purchased with independence is seldom worth its price. Declined their offer. We'll continue on our chosen path. Uncertain though it may be, the parallels to her current situation were striking. Joseph had chosen independence and purpose over security and certainty. A century later, Sophia faced essentially the same choice. The next morning, she walked, the perimeter of the property alone, trying to see it through fresh eyes. The orchard in full bloom, the newly cleared fields waiting for additional plantings, the small barn transformed into a cidery, the cottage garden bursting with spring vegetables. Everywhere she looked, she saw not just what was, but what could be, the vision gradually taking physical form through daily effort and commitment. Chen's offer promised immediate reward without further struggle. But it also meant surrendering this emerging creation at the very moment it was beginning to reveal its potential. More than that, it meant abandoning the broader vision of what Willow Creek might represent, not just for her family, but for the community and the county's agricultural future. By the time she completed her circuit of the property, Sophia had made her decision. She texted Chen a simple message: "Thank you for your offer, but Willow Creek is not for sale at any price." His reply came almost immediately: "You're making a significant mistake, Ms. Carter. Westridge will proceed with development on all surrounding properties. Your farm will become an island in a sea of construction, with likely impacts on your water access and business viability." The threat was thinly veiled but clear. Westridge intended to move forward aggressively, possibly using their surrounding properties to create problems for Willow Creek. Yet, rather than intimidating her, Chen's message solidified Sophia's resolve. If Willow Creek was worth surrounding, if it was worth $5 million to Westridge, then it was certainly worth fighting for. That afternoon, she called a meeting at the farm, inviting Eleanor, Dr. Oakes from the university, Ray, Margaret, and several neighboring farmers who had expressed concern about Westridge's plans. They gathered in the newly renovated parlor of the main house, with additional folding chairs brought in to accommodate everyone. "Thank you all for coming," Sophia began. "As most of you know, Westridge Development has been pursuing an aggressive strategy to create a luxury development surrounding Willow Creek Farm. Yesterday, they made a final offer to purchase this property, which I declined." Murmurs of approval ran through the group, but Sophia raised her hand. "That decision means Westridge will likely intensify pressure on the county commission for approval of their plan and on neighboring properties to sell. They've made it clear they intend to isolate Willow Creek if they can't acquire it." Eleanor spoke up. "The legal challenges to their water usage plans are substantial, but Westridge has resources to fight prolonged battles. We need a more comprehensive strategy." "Which is why I've asked you all here," Sophia said. "Individually, each of our farms and businesses is vulnerable. But what if we created something larger? A formal agricultural heritage district that would provide legal protections, marketing advantages, and shared resources." The concept sparked immediate interest. Over the next 2 hours, the group discussed possibilities ranging from a simple marketing collective to a legally designated agricultural preservation zone that would require special zoning considerations. Dr. Oakes offered the university's resources to develop sustainable farming approaches suited to the region's specific conditions. Eleanor suggested the trust could provide matching funds for cooperative infrastructure improvements. By evening's end, a framework had emerged. The Mapleton Agricultural Heritage Cooperative would unite farms committed to sustainable practices and preservation of historical agricultural approaches. Members would share marketing resources, equipment, and expertise while retaining independent ownership. With proper designation from the county, the cooperative zone would receive special consideration in development decisions affecting water rights, road access, and zoning. This is more than just defensive. Frank Johnson, a third-generation dairy farmer, observed. This is actually a better business model for most of us. Shared resources, collective marketing, educational components, these make economic sense, regardless of Westridge's plans. As the meeting concluded, Sophia felt a surge of hope more powerful than anything she'd experienced since discovering Joseph's apple varieties. They weren't just fighting against something, they were building something. A vision for rural preservation that honored heritage while embracing innovation and cooperation. The weeks that followed brought intense activity on multiple fronts. The cooperative concept gained momentum as more farmers joined, attracted by both the protective aspects and the economic benefits of collective marketing and resource sharing. Eleanor's legal team worked with county officials to develop formal designation criteria for an agricultural heritage zone, using models from other regions that had successfully balanced preservation with development. Westridge countered by accelerating their timeline and intensifying their marketing campaign, emphasizing job creation and tax benefits while characterizing the cooperative as anti-progress. Community meetings became increasingly contentious, with clear divisions emerging between those who prioritized economic development and those concerned with preserving agricultural heritage. Through it all, work at Willow Creek continued. The tasting room was completed and opened for limited weekend hours, offering samples of their test batches while educating visitors about the history of the farm and the unique apple varieties being restored. Local media coverage brought unexpected attention, drawing visitors from neighboring counties curious about the lost apple varieties and the hidden safe story. Dr. Oakes and her team made a breakthrough in propagating Joseph's most challenging variety, the one showing the strongest disease resistance markers, creating genuine excitement in horticultural circles and leading to the university's first licensing inquiry, which would provide immediate revenue to support the farm's continued restoration. As June arrived, the County Commission finally scheduled their decisive hearing on both Westridge's development application and the proposed Agricultural Heritage Zone designation. The meeting was moved to the high school gymnasium to accommodate the anticipated crowd, with local television stations planning to broadcast the proceedings. The night before the hearing, Sophia sat on the porch of the main farmhouse, which was now structurally restored, though interior work continued. The view across the orchard to the rolling hills beyond was spectacular in the evening light, the young fruit now visible on trees that had been neglected for years before their rescue. She was joined by Ethan and Lily, both uncharacteristically quiet as they contemplated the next day's hearing. "What happens if we lose?" Lily finally asked, voicing the question that had lingered unspoken between them. Sophia considered her answer carefully. "If the Commission approves Westridge's plan without the Agricultural Heritage Zone protections, we face a more difficult path. But we don't stop. We adapt. We persevere. We find another way forward." "Like Joseph did during the drought of 1894, Ethan said, referencing a journal entry they had read together, when he wrote about converting adversity to advantage by developing more drought-resistant grafting techniques. Sophia smiled at her son's perfect recall of Joseph's words. Exactly. Whatever happens tomorrow, Willow Creek has already achieved something important. It's connected us to this land, to its history, and to each other in ways I never imagined possible when we first saw that auction sign. The gymnasium was filled beyond capacity the following morning, with passionate supporters on both sides carrying signs and wearing buttons declaring their positions. The commissioners sat at a long table on the stage, looking somewhat overwhelmed by the turnout and the emotional intensity in the room. David Chen presented first, his presentation polished and persuasive as always. The economic benefits he outlined were substantial. Hundreds of jobs, millions in tax revenue, infrastructure improvements that would benefit the entire county. He emphasized Westridge's commitment to environmental sustainability and aesthetically pleasing design that would honor the rural character of the region while bringing necessary economic development. When Eleanor presented the Agricultural Heritage Zone proposal, she took a different approach, focusing not on opposition to Westridge, but on the positive vision of the cooperative. She detailed how the proposed zone would preserve working farms, while encouraging innovation, education, and sustainable practices. Rather than preventing all development, the designation would create guidelines, ensuring compatibility with existing agricultural operations. This isn't about choosing between past and future, she concluded. It's about building a future that honors and incorporates our agricultural heritage rather than erasing it. Public comment lasted for hours, with impassioned speakers on both sides. Business owners emphasized the need for economic growth. Farmers spoke of multi-generational connections to the land. Younger residents described the challenge of finding local employment, while older ones expressed concern about losing community character. When Sophia's turn came, she brought something none of the others had, a tangible product of Willow Creek's restoration. Placing a bottle on the commissioner's table, she explained, "This is the first official bottling of Willow Resurrection cider, made from the historic orchard we've restored. It represents what's possible when we approach development as enhancement rather than replacement." Glancing toward the section where Ethan and Lily sat with Margaret and Ray, she added, "When I first came to Mapleton County, I was a single mother with few prospects beyond waiting tables. Willow Creek Farm gave my family not just a home, but a purpose and a future. I believe the Agricultural Heritage Zone can do the same for our entire community. Honor our past while opening doors to new possibilities that remain true to who we are." The commissioners ultimately voted 3-2 to approve the Agricultural Heritage Zone designation, with modified boundaries that still allowed for a scaled-down version of Westridge's development in less agriculturally significant areas. It was a compromise that left neither side completely satisfied, but that most community members viewed as a reasonable balance. For Willow Creek, the decision meant protection of their water rights, limitations on incompatible adjacent development, and formal recognition as an agricultural heritage site that would enhance their marketing position. For the newly formed cooperative, it provided a foundation for collective action that would strengthen all participating farms. 1 month later, as summer reached its peak, Willow Creek Farm hosted the official launch of their first commercial cider release. The event doubled as a celebration of the cooperative's formation and a thank you to the community members who had supported their efforts. The restored farmhouse and grounds welcomed over 300 visitors throughout the day. Tours of the orchard, demonstrations of traditional cider pressing techniques, and tastings of both conventional and heritage variety ciders created an atmosphere of celebration and accomplishment. Eleanor, observing the activity from the shade of an ancient oak tree, smiled as Sophia joined her. "You've created something remarkable here in just 9 months," she said. "Joseph Willow would be proud." "We've created it," Sophia corrected her. "Without your trust, none of this would have been possible." Eleanor shook her head. "The trust provided opportunity, but you provided vision and determination. There's a difference between restoring buildings and revitalizing a heritage. You've done both." As the celebration continued into evening, with string lights illuminating the orchard and local musicians playing on the farmhouse porch, Sophia found a quiet moment to visit the parlor where they had discovered Joseph's safe. The restored room now featured a display of items from the safe, the journal, ledgers, and period photographs, along with the story of their discovery. She opened the journal to its final entry, written in 1924, when Joseph was in his 70s, August 17th, 1924. "Place this journal and other papers in the vault today, a record of our stewardship for whoever might follow. Orchards, like all, worthwhile endeavors require faith in a future beyond our own horizon. We plant trees whose full maturity we may never witness, graft varieties whose peak production will come after our hands can no longer harvest them. This is not folly but wisdom, to contribute to a story longer than our own chapter, to nurture something that will outlast us. Willow Creek has been my life's work, not because I shaped it, but because it shaped me. May whoever finds these words understand that the true harvest of this place is not measured only in bushels or barrels, but in the cultivation of both land and character." As Sophia closed the journal, she gazed out the window at her children among the celebration crowd. Ethan confidently explaining cider production to visitors, Lily proudly leading tours of her expanding herb garden. Beyond them, cooperative members discuss plans for shared equipment purchases and marketing initiatives. University researchers collected data from the experimental orchard sections. The hidden safe had indeed changed everything, though not in the way treasure stories usually unfold. Its contents, knowledge, history, connection to the past, had proved more valuable than gold or jewels could have been. Joseph Willow's vision, preserved in that safe for nearly a century, had catalyzed not just the rebirth of one farm, but potentially a new model for rural preservation across the county. Outside, as twilight deepened, visitors raised glasses of Willow Resurrection cider in a toast to the farm's renewal and the community's future. A future that would now include both thoughtful development and preserved agricultural heritage, thanks to a single mother's courage to bid on a struggling farm and the century-old vision she had discovered beneath its floorboards. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.